Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, May the 26th, 2023. Today I want to talk about the marriage of Prince Harry and Meghan. Now, having looked around YouTube, there are a lot of media outlets who are suggesting that the marriage might be in serious trouble. And I sense a certain amount of glee. Now, clearly, Prince Harry and Meghan are not a particularly popular couple. They've done a lot of stuff wrong. They've made a lot of enemies. So if you're an enemy of this couple, it seems natural to wish them harm. You want their marriage to collapse. And, you interpret everything as evidence that the marriage is over or is about to be over. So I wanted to take this opportunity to look at their charts, both from a Western and Eastern perspective, and to consider this possibility. Is their marriage over? Are its days numbered? Can astrology come up with any answers? Can astrology tell that the marriage is over? I mean, I'm thinking you've got to be careful here. It's just so easy to kick people when they're down. And if everyone is saying that the marriage is over, then maybe it's not over. Maybe that gives Harry and Meghan an extra incentive to keep it going, whatever difficulties they might be facing. I also want to consider the possibility that Meghan and Princess Diana just might not have got on with each other. I mean, let's speculate that Princess Diana was still alive, that she hadn't have been killed in that tunnel in Paris, and that Harry had nonetheless met up with Meghan, and they got married. So his mother-in-law, her mother-in-law was Princess Diana, and she's still alive. I suppose she'd be queen. No, she wouldn't be queen by now, would she? Because she'd already parted ways with Charles. But let's just imagine what would it be like? How would Meghan have got on with her mother-in-law? Well, I think there might have been problems there. But anyway, let's look at some charts. So we'll start off with Meghan's chart. I mean, I have looked at this chart before, but I'm going to go over it one more time. She is a Leo. There's her Leo. She has, I think, a very high opinion of her, high opinion of herself. She's got Mercury in Leo. Mercury doesn't actually work very well in Leo. Leo is a fixed sign. It's too inflexible for Mercury. So Mercury in Leo, particularly conjunct the Sun, represents someone who's got very fixed opinions, who is not going to compromise. And I think it makes someone sort of difficult and also perhaps narrow. She has a view of the world, and that view of the world is just not going to change. We also notice that she has Venus in Virgo. Now, that Venus in Virgo, I think that Venus in Virgo could be a problem in one sense, because, Venus is the planet of relating, and you put it in Virgo, and it starts to be quite contractual. It starts to relate with an agenda. And so it may be very difficult for Meghan to just relate for the sake of relating. That her mind is always ticking away, thinking about where is the advantage? what is the material advantage in relating to people in a particular way? Did that have a relationship to how did that have any relationship to how she relates to Harry, or why she chose Harry? I don't know. But yeah, it's Venus in Virgo can be a problem. Venus in Virgo is it's fallen, because Venus is exalted in Pisces, so it's fallen in the opposite sign of Virgo. But she has Venus sextile Mars. Venus sextile Mars is a great aspect to have. It's about sexuality, it's about projecting sexuality, and you'll notice that her Sun is on her Venus-Mars sextile. Sun is on her Venus-Mars midpoint. So that's her sex appeal. That's the thing that perhaps Harry picked up on. Another thing to notice about the chart, and I think perhaps the best thing about the chart, is that you can see that this is the horizon. It's all below the horizon, except for Mars, and that does suggest that she does have a certain grounding to her. It might not seem like it, but I think she is anchored in reality. She has a certain sense of, life's priorities. She's a certain sense that, she has to give her life foundations, and she hasn't got, she hasn't got all the time in the world, and I think that's positive, and that might be something that Harry was able to recognise. Also, she was born with a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, so she was born right at the early 80s. So she's kind of the same generation as what's her name, Kim Kardashian and Paris Hilton, and that whole sort of reality TV crowd. Not quite as successful as them, perhaps, at least not to begin with. But that's her generation, and her Saturn is very strong. Saturn in Libra. Saturn is exalted in Libra, and it's conjunct Jupiter. So, with a strong Saturn like that, she has a certain sense of grounding. She has a certain sense of the priorities. A sense of the priorities that matter. Now, as far as elements are concerned, she doesn't have many planets in water signs. The only planet she's got in a water sign is Mars in Cancer, and that Mars in Cancer looks a bit odd, doesn't it? It sort of is the one above the horizon. That Mars in Cancer is probably Harry. Traditionally, Mars represents a soldier. Of course, Harry is a soldier. And Mars in Cancer is fallen. It's in its fall. Mars doesn't actually work very well in Cancer. And I think that kind of really represents Harry. Cancer is an emotional sign, a man who is emotional, who is sentimental, doesn't know how to deal with his feelings, but who has a military background. So I think that this Mars, one could say, is the kind of person she's going to get married to, and that really has come to pass. Now, as far as Harry's chart is concerned, I don't think I want to spend too long on Harry's chart. I've looked at it before, but notice that he's the opposite of Meghan. All his planets are up there except the moon. His planets are all above the horizon. He's completely focused on being in the public eye. He has no grounding. The only grounding he's got is the moon in Taurus. The moon in Taurus, moon 21 Taurus, what does that represent? Well, there is Diana's chart, and we see she's got Venus at 24 Taurus. So his mother had Venus at 24 Taurus. So I think that that Taurus, that moon in Taurus represents his mother, and he's looking for a mother. I mean, I know it's all pretty obvious, and that moon in Taurus is opposition. It's on its own. In Indian astrology, he's got an isolated moon. I think it's called something like Kemadruma yoga. And if you've got Kemadruma yoga, a moon which is not aspected, not conjunct, or doesn't have the other planets next to it, the North Node doesn't count in that scheme. It suggests someone who is isolated and somewhat alone. And when you look at Harry in California, he's out of his element. I mean, I think that's quite clear. At least it's clear to me. And I think that reflects the fact that he's got Kamadruma yoga. You know, he thought, I think, that Meghan was perhaps a substitute for his mother, but she's not. She's a very different person. Note Harry's Saturn. Harry's Saturn at 1251 Scorpio. And let's just have a look at how that Saturn relates to Meghan's chart. Remember 1251 Scorpio. She's got her sun at 12 Leo. In other words, Harry's Saturn is square Meghan's sun, and I actually think that's quite serious. You know, there is Meghan's Leo, sun in Leo, wanting all that, wanting that attention, wanting to be the center of everything, and Harry's Saturn squares it. So it undermines something. I think there's something about the way Harry comes across with all his baggage that is making her feel that this isn't really the way it's supposed to be. Also, she's got Sun on her Venus-Mars midpoint. I don't know. I mean, that's perhaps quite serious. But his Saturn is on her Venus-Mars midpoint. I think that is about probably something to do with sexuality and sex, and one doesn't want to intrude, but I wonder, is there an issue there? I don't know. His Saturn on her Venus-Mars midpoint. That just doesn't sound good. There's some way in which he is undermining her. Maybe it's his expectations, and he's just got all this baggage, all these problems, and it's all about him, isn't it? It's all about his problems, and I don't think that this was something that she really bargained for. So those are a few things about the two charts. So I quickly want to make a point about Princess Diana. Now, if you look at Meghan, she's got Mars 11 Cancer. Princess Diana. Princess Diana. Her sun is at 9 Cancer. So Diana's sun is conjunct Meghan's Mars. And I just get the feeling that if these two women had known each other, Princess Diana would not have liked Meghan. Diana was, a generally emotional person. She's a sun in Cancer, Mercury in Cancer. She lived through that cancer, and she was probably in the end, quite a good judge of character. I think she kind of would have seen Meghan. And, we hear about Harry being estranged from his father. But I'm wondering if Princess Diana had been alive, and if somehow Harry had got involved with Meghan. I mean, that's a big if. I mean, probably if Diana had still been alive, Harry's fate and fortunes would have completely changed, and he would have married someone else, and he never would have heard of Meghan. But let's pretend that he had married Meghan. I think that Harry would be estranged from his mother. I think there's a good chance that he'd be talking in America about his mother and perhaps how awful she was. I mean, that's an incredible thing to say. But Meghan and Diana, I just do not believe they would have got on. And I think that Harry, I think Harry would have been perhaps doing to Diana what he's been doing to his father. That's quite an incredible thing. Now, as far as whether or not the marriage will survive, it's so easy, isn't it, to say that their marriage is doomed. You just want to, people want to enjoy this thought that Harry's going to be completely destroyed when this marriage breaks up. But let's look at it. Let's look at it in a slightly different way. Let's look at it from a perspective of Indian astrology. So here is a Vedic perspective. So this is Prince Harry's chart in his Indian chart. And in his Indian chart, he's got Mars in the 12th house. In other words, he's got Kuja dosha. This is like a Mars affliction. And there's a lot of bad press about Kuja dosha. The idea is that if you have Kuja dosha, you are going to be victimized by your spouse. Your spouse is going to give you a hard time, and finding real love is going to be difficult, if not impossible. But let's have a look at Meghan's Indian chart. She's also got Mars in the 12th. So you've got two people who both have Kuja dosha. Now, what that means is that the affliction is cancelled. Because if you've got two people who are both vulnerable from being victimized by their spouses, then there's no victimization. And so from a Vedic perspective, that is a major plus about the marriage. It might seem that it's all going wrong, particularly in the eyes of their enemies, but that suggests to me that things might not be so bad. That they perhaps do have a connection. And logically, logically, if you astrology aside, why should their marriage break up? They've got two children. Logically, it might be fine. Unfortunately, Harry is running into something, and he needs to be aware of this. Let me explain the problem that Harry has got. Now, using Indian astrology. Now, Indian astrology divides life into these huge, these huge sections. You know, the idea is in a perfect world we live to 120, and 120 years, and you divide this 120 years into 9 periods of life. And so we can see in Harry's case that in 2007 he started a period of life ruled by the north node of the moon, and this continues until 2025. Okay, fair enough. And he is now about to move to the end of this period. In March of next year, he enters the Rahu, that means the north node, the Rahu Mahadasha, the larger period, and the Mars smaller period, Rahu Mars. Now, what's the problem there? In his chart, he has got a Rahu Mars opposition. So in other words, the period he's going to be in from March 2024 through to March 2025 is going to be absolutely critical. Now, I think there is a danger there that next year Harry is going to be in real trouble. I mean, this may be psychological trouble. I think Harry needs help now. Harry needs to be aware of this. Harry needs to be probably consulting a good Indian astrologer and working out some remedies to sort this out. And because I think when this thing explodes, when Harry starts to go through this 1 year period, I think it's going to be tough. We already know it's probably going to be tough because we already know that Harry is under a lot of pressure, but this pressure is not going to relent, I don't think. Now, if we go back to the Western chart, and let's just look at what's going on in Meghan's chart. Notice that Venus in Virgo. Now, Saturn has just gone into Pisces. So sooner or later, Saturn is going to make an opposition to her Venus in Virgo. That opposition, I think, is in the spring. If you will bear with me, I'll give you a precise date. Sorry, I should have had this offhand. I should have written it down. But the precise time of this opposition is going to be 1308. That's going to be the end of March 2024. And interestingly, on the 25th of March 2024, there is an eclipse. There's a full moon eclipse at around 5 Libra. So that eclipse on her Moon, Saturn, Jupiter conjunction here at the same time that she has Saturn opposition Venus, at the same time that Harry goes into a really difficult period using his Indian chart. I think this is the time when the marriage is going to be under considerable pressure. Now, we get further support for that if we look at Meghan's solar return. The solar return is it's a time when the sun returns to the place it was when she was born. So we can cast a solar return for this year, August the 4th, approximately, of this year. So let's just do a quick solar return. We'll set it for 2023 because I think the problems for Meghan and Harry really start in the spring of next year. I'm not convinced we're going to see major issues right now. So let's wow. August the 4th, 2023. Do you see it? She's got Saturn exactly on her 7th house cusp at her, on her solar return for this year, August the 4th, 2023. And that solar return is going to be operational for a whole year until her birthday in August of next year. So there are a number of factors which suggest to me that next year the couple are going to be under a lot of pressure. And I think the pressure kind of comes from Harry. I don't think it's just about the way this thing is being reported is that it's somehow Harry is a victim. It's manipulative Meghan who is causing these problems. It's going to perhaps engineer the end of the marriage, all that kind of stuff. I'm not convinced about that. I think you have to look at Harry's culpability. And try to feel sorry for Meghan. Meghan has to deal with this man. She's dealing with someone who's got major psychological issues, and I think that the Rahu North Node Dasha and Subdasha is going to really bring them out into the open. So am I saying that am I agreeing with Harry and Meghan's enemies that the marriage is over? No, I'm not. But I am saying there is going to be a crisis, and they're going to have to really work to keep the thing together. Certainly from spring of next year onwards. The question is, do they have the persistence? Do they have the maturity to deal with this? And I think we will perhaps see at the beginning of 2025 when the Dasha changes. If Harry can get through, if Harry and Meghan can get through to the spring of 2025, then I would become more optimistic about their marriage. But that kind of is up to them. So I'm not saying that it is for sure that their marriage is over, but they're going to have to really really work on it. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say on the subject. Thank you for listening. I'm trying not to be too negative about them. One should not wish this couple harm. One doesn't want to join one doesn't want to join the bandwagon. And one just hopes that they get the advice they need and they show the maturity that is certainly going to be required of them. Anyway, again, thanks for listening.